Greetings, this is just a short video on the setup I regularly use. This setup has proven to be very reliable to me, and if you'd like to take the ideas and implement them on your own aircraft, then by all means. I'm very partial to the quadcopter. The center I-beam is a 1/2 inch by 4 inch board, and the booms are 3/4 inch dowels. The frame is roughly 20 by 20 inches squared. The rear boom is painted white just for orientation purposes. I highly recommend doing this regardless of your setup. These are the components I usually fly with. They change over time, but these are the ones I'm generally coming back to. Starting from the top, the flight control board I usually run right now is a DJI NASA Lite. It's ridiculously stable, and I like it for FPV because it's nice and smooth, but unfortunately it's sort of autonomous and it kind of does what it wants, so you're just going to have to learn how to fly with it. It's completely different from using just standard gyros. It is my 3rd or 4th flight board, and one thing I've really learned about it is do not cheap this. The more money you put, the better your copter will fly. I've used several different types of ESCs, and I finally switched over to the Cubrain 4x20 amp because I hated calibrating each individual one. So I calibrated this thing several months ago. I've used it on several different motors, and it still runs just fine. It runs about 30 bucks, and I think it's definitely worth the money. As far as motors go, I use between 900 and 950 kV, and of course Turnigy because it's just so cheap. I've never actually used like the really high-end motors, so I really don't have much to say about them. And of course, when you use a slower spinning motor, you're going to use a larger prop. I'm pretty partial to the 1045 SF. I get it from GotHeliRC.com. They're pretty cheap, about $1.50 a pop. The more you buy, the less it actually costs you. Our battery size changes quite frequently, but between 2.8 amps and 3.6 amps, 3 cells you'll never run. With a quadcopter this size, it's about 6 to 8 minutes flying, depending on how aggressive you are. I'm rather cheap about a lot of things, and I also cheap this radio. I use an FST6 2.4 GHz. It's about a $60 radio, and they're pretty easy to find. It's like a Chinese knockoff of the Spectrum DX6, I believe. The range on it's pretty good, 400 to 500 meters, no problem. After that, you get a little bit of lag here and there, but maybe if I change up my antenna orientation or position on the aircraft, it could clear up that problem. Now onto the FPV components. As far as video down goes, I switched to the Foxtech 5.8 gigahertz. It's pretty cheap and it seems to be pretty reliable. It doesn't have as much penetrating as the 900 I used to run, but it doesn't mess with my controls, and I'm pretty happy with it so far. I did recently switch to the cloverleaf antennas. You can get them on the Foxtech website for like 20 bucks for a set of up and down, and that made a significant amount of difference because they're centrally polarized, so it doesn't really matter where I mount it. As long as they can see each other, it'll transmit just fine. I do run a separate battery for my video system. I know this is like a big no-no for FPV, but I don't run an on-screen display, so I don't really care at all. Since the GoPro has its own battery and the transmitter is only like 400 milliwatts, it doesn't really affect me too much, and it's not that much weight. As far as cameras go, I use an old GoPro here I've had for many years. Quality's not too good, but it does record. It does transmit out. It's just a little function, but you do have to make a special cable, and if you'd like to, you can private message me or leave a comment, and I can show you how to make one. It's not terribly difficult, it just requires a little bit of soldering ability. The next thing I'm going to show you is the actual layout on the central I-beam. This is a top-down view of the actual mounting of all the hardware. The camera's located in the front and the battery's located in the back. Those are my two heaviest objects, so I placed them as far away from each other as I could. And the NASA control board sits right in the center, which is about where it should be. It's really important if you're flying FPV to separate your control antenna and your FPV antenna. My FPV antenna is located on the front left, and my RX antenna is on my back right boom. I keep them as far away from them apart so they don't actually mess with each other. I mentioned in my other videos that you want to keep everything really close to the aircraft and balance it as much as possible. Don't be afraid to spread things out on an quadcopter platform. As you can see, my actual video antenna is tucked underneath of it, so it's not protruding at all. My RX antenna is actually horizontal on the boom, so it's minimal drag and nothing really protrudes if something gets into a crash. There's two safety devices I'd like you to put on your aircraft. This is just a little advice from me to you. A voltage indicator, audio, so if you're getting low it can tell you. I'm not running OST, so this is important to me. And then if you look in the middle, there's a white strip, and that basically just has my number and contact me if you lose it, because if you're like me and you do long distance FPV, if it goes down, it's going to be rather hard to locate it. So if you could just put your number on the aircraft, you might actually have a good Samaritan to give it back to you. This is the belly of my aircraft. I posted the Q brand underneath with some Velcro and a zip tie just because it's so large and it needs a lot of airflow, because it is for a Season 1. My landing gear is just cabinet knobs I picked up from Home Depot. I just posted them up on each boom, nice and low profile, and they look kind of cool, and they take a little bit of beating also. I've never been really happy with the motor mounts supplied with the motors I've purchased, so I've made my own, and I'm about to show you how to do it. This is one of my infamous beautiful Microsoft Paint diagrams. The mounting plate is made out of aluminum strips. You can get them usually in the hardware section. I found them near the mailboxes and Lowe's, usually used for mounting and custom brackets and whatnot. This is going to be very hard without a drill press. I have one, and for machining it's probably the best tool. Harbor Freight sells for about $50, and if you do a lot of machining and all, this is such a valuable tool. Measure the size of your motor and then place 2 mounting holes on the outside to the size of the nut and bolt you're actually going to use to mount your motors to the beam. Motors generally have an X configuration, so just use the mounting bracket that comes with it to draw out a template for the diamond shaped configuration of holes. The center hole is a motor relief hole for the axle. Generally on outrunner motors the axle protrudes out of the bottom, so if you just drill like a 3/8 inch hole in the middle of that diamond, it'll allow that to free spin with plenty of room so it doesn't actually grind up against the plate. Now moving down to the second diagram, these are the motor mount holes. Generally the aluminum is going to be thicker than the screw is long, so you're going to have to drill one hole all the way down through the size of the threading, and then you're going to have to drill a second hole with a bit that's the size of the head, so the screw can sink into the aluminum and still attach to the motor mount itself, or you just find longer mounting screws, but make sure that the bottom of the aluminum and the screw are actually flush, or that'll make it kind of rigid and cause a lot of vibration. As always, if you have any questions on this, or if you'd like me to make a video on it, just comment or private message me. I'll help you out, no problem. Like I mentioned previous, this is just a overview of what I use. You can take the ideas and implement in your own projects, or if you already knew this stuff, then carry on. And this is the part of the video where I beg for a like and subscribe, so either do or don't. Appreciate it.